one is ID selector. The ID selector uses the ID attribute of an HTML element to select a specific element. The ID of an element is unique within a page, so the ID selector is used to select one unique element. So here we give an ID to the div element container. You can give any name as the ID name, but the ID is unique for each HTML element. To select an element with a specific ID, write a hash character followed by the ID of the name, that is hash container. This is how we select the ID. Here we change the background color of the container into yellow green. Let's save. So here the background color of the div section changed to yellow green. We cannot add multiple IDs to a single HTML element. Also, an ID name cannot start with a number. That's all about ID selector. The next one is universal selector. Universal selector selects all HTML elements on the page. This is the syntax of universal selector. The CSS rule below will affect every HTML element on the page. That is, here we give text align to center and color blue. Let's save this. It affected all the HTML elements. The next one is grouping selector. The grouping selector selects all the HTML elements with the same style definitions. Here we group the same elements who have the same styles. Okay, these are the most basic CSS selectors. You can check for others in the Google. What is a CSS comment? CSS comments are not displayed in the browser, but they can help document your source code. Mainly, the comments are used to explain the code and may help when you edit the source code at a later date. This is the syntax of a comment. Starts with this and ends with this. Now let's look the syntax of CSS. The syntax of CSS is like this. First, we should select a selector. It can be any selector like element, class, ID, universal, grouping, pseudo selectors, etc. And then we write the property like color, background, text align, background image, etc. And then our value. We can now look at an example. Here we select an ID selector and give the property as background color, then the value as gray color. Now the background color of the div element is changed to gray. The next topic is CSS colors. Colors are specified using predefined color names or RGB, hex, HSL, RGBA, HSLA values. So the first case is predefined color names. In CSS, a color can be specified by using a predefined color name. That is, the blue is already predefined in the CSS. The next one is RGB. The R stands for red, G stands for green, and the B stands for blue. The next one is hex code. We can find the hex code of a particular color with the help of Google. I will show you how it is done. Just search for hex color code. With the help of this site, you can get the hex code of any color you want. The next one is HSL. We can find the HSL color code of each color using HSL color picker. You can arrange the colors as you wish and you will get hex code, RGBA value, HSLA value from this website. That's all about CSS colors. Next, I am going to cover the basics background properties. The CSS background properties are used to add background effects for elements. The first one is background color. The background color property specifies the background color of an element. For example, the background color of a page is set like this. Here we gave light blue color as the background of our body of HTML. It will look like this. Also, you can set the background color for any HTML elements. For example, here the H1, P elements will have different background color. For H1, the background color is green and for P, background color is yellow. This is our result. The next background property is background image. The background image property specifies an image to use as the background of an element. By default, the image is repeated, so it covers the entire element. This is the syntax of background image. That is, we should give a reference to our image.jpg. Here the image is repeated and it covers the entire body of our HTML page. The next one is background repeat. By default, the background image property repeats an image both horizontally and vertically. If we give background repeat as no repeat, then it will show the background image only once. Here the background image is shown only once. The next one is background position property. The background position property is used to specify the position of the background image. Here we are giving the position of the background image as right top, that is top right of our HTML page. So here our image will move to the top right corner of our HTML page. The last one is CSS background shorthand property. To shorten the code, it is also possible to specify all the background properties in one single property. This is called a shorthand property. Instead of writing background image, background repeat, background position in different lines, we can use the shorthand property as background. Here we gave the URL and the background repeat and the background position. So we can reduce our code using shorthand property. The next property is CSS borders. The CSS border properties allow you to specify the style, width and color of an element's border. The border style property specifies what kind of border to display. Here I have used dash, but there are so many border styles are available. For example, solid, dotted, double, etc. You can practice those also. The border style property can have from 1 to 4 values. For example, for the top border, right border, bottom border, and the left border. The border width property specifies the width of the 4 borders. The width can be set as a specific size in px, pt, cm, em, etc. or by using one of the 3 predefined values, thin, medium or thick. Here I have used 10 pixel. The border color property is used to set the color of the 4 borders. If the border color is not set, it inherits the color of the element. Here I have given tomato as the border color. If we don't give the color, then the border color will automatically black. That is the color of the element. The border radius property is used to add rounded borders to an element. Here I have used 1 rem as the border radius. So this is our result of the particular code that we have written. Like you saw, there are many properties to consider when dealing with borders. To shorten the code, it is also possible to specify all the individual border properties in one property, that is, only border. The border property is a shorthand property for the following individual border properties, that is, border width, border style, border color. We don't need to write them in different lines. We can write those in a single line. The next CSS property is CSS margins. The CSS margins properties are used to create space around elements outside of any defined borders. With CSS, you have full control over the margins. There are properties for setting the margin for each side of an element, that is, margin top, margin right, margin bottom, and margin left. Here we gave margin to all the sides of the container. Margin top has 100 pixel and margin bottom has 100 pixel, then margin right 150 pixel and margin left 80 pixel. The result will look like this. So here the container has moved 100 pixel from top and 80 pixel from left, 150 pixel from right and 100 pixel from bottom. We can also give auto as the margin properties. If we give auto, the browser calculates the margin by itself. And if we use percentage, it specifies a margin in percentage of the width of the containing element. Also, negative values are also allowed in margin. We can add negative values as the margins. For example, if we add minus 50, then it will go like this. To shorten the code, it is possible to specify all the margin properties in one property.
Here, the margin property is a shorthand property for the following individual margin properties: margin top, margin right, margin bottom, and margin left. So, here is how it works. If the margin property has four values, here 25 pixel, 50 pixel, 75 pixel, and 100 pixel. So, here the top margin is 25 pixel and the right margin is 50 pixel, bottom margin is 75 pixel and the left margin is 100 pixel. If the margin property has only three values, then here the top margin is 25 pixel, the right and left margins are 50 pixel and the bottom margin is 75 pixel. The result will be like this. If the margin property has only two values, then here the top and bottom margins are 25 pixel and the right and left margins are 50 pixel.